What if something as simple as your refrigerator, an appliance you've trusted for decades, was quietly working against your health every single day? It sounds impossible at first. After all, we've been taught for years that refrigeration is the gold standard of food safety. But what if I told you that storing certain everyday foods in the fridge can actually do more harm than good, especially as we get older? Not because they spoil faster, but because the cold disrupts their natural structure, destroys their nutritional value, and in some cases even triggers the formation of harmful compounds. This video is not about scare tactics. It's about awareness, backed by real science, and more importantly, simple changes that can help you preserve the nutrients your body needs, most nutrients that support your heart, your brain, your immune system, and your digestion. If you're over 60 and working hard to eat healthier, reduce your risk of chronic illness, and stay independent longer, the last thing you want is for your refrigerator to unknowingly interfere with those goals. Yet according to multiple studies and surveys, over 90% of Americans continue to refrigerate certain foods that are actually harmed by cold storage. These foods may look fine on the outside, but under the surface, something is changing, and not in a good way. The texture shifts, the flavor disappears, and worst of all, essential compounds like antioxidants, enzymes, and heart-healthy oils are either destroyed or become less bioavailable to your body. In today's episode, we're going to uncover 9 common foods that should never be refrigerated, and more importantly, we'll explain the science behind why. We'll walk through each one carefully and offer easy, practical tips you can use starting today to store them the right way, no fancy equipment needed. And here's something to keep in mind as you listen. Some of these foods are likely in your fridge right now. Some may have been there for years, out of habit, out of convenience, or because that's just what everyone around us does. But you deserve better. You deserve to understand how food behaves and how you can make small, confident choices that protect your well-being long-term. Let's start this journey together, one food at a time. Let's begin with a food that almost every household keeps in the fridge at some point: potatoes. It might seem harmless to tuck your potatoes into a lower shelf next to your other vegetables. After all, the refrigerator keeps things fresh, right? But in the case of potatoes, that cold temperature sets off a chemical process called cold-induced sweetening. This is where the natural starches in potatoes begin converting into sugars much faster than normal. Now, why does that matter? Because when you later bake or fry those cold-stored potatoes, those sugars interact with naturally occurring amino acids to form a chemical called acrylamide. According to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, acrylamide is a compound that forms in some foods during high-temperature cooking processes and is considered a potential health concern. The National Cancer Institute echoes this by explaining that while human studies are ongoing, acrylamide has been shown to cause cancer in laboratory animals, and its impact on human health is being closely studied. So, it's not just about your potatoes tasting strangely sweet or gritty, it's about limiting your exposure to compounds your body simply doesn't need. And that's not all. A study from the University of Idaho found that refrigerated potatoes had a 300% increase in sugar content after just 2 weeks. On top of that, the texture changes as the cold damages the cell structure, leaving you with that unpleasant, mealy consistency you may have noticed in mashed potatoes that just didn't taste right. Fortunately, storing potatoes the right way is incredibly simple. Keep them in a cool, dry, and dark place, ideally around 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. A pantry or even a cardboard box in a closet will do the job. And here's a bonus tip that most people never hear. Keep your potatoes away from onions. When stored close together, the natural gases they release can cause each other to spoil faster. A little distance goes a long way. With the right conditions, your potatoes can last up to 3 months, but left in the fridge, they'll likely go soft or sprout in just a couple of weeks. Now let's turn to another pantry staple that often ends up in the refrigerator: bread. If you've ever wondered why your sandwich bread turns hard and dry so quickly after refrigeration, the answer lies in something called starch retrogradation. That's a scientific way of saying that when bread gets cold, the starch molecules reorganize and expel moisture, making the bread firm and crumbly. Researchers from the Institute of Food Technologists found that bread stored in the refrigerator goes stale up to 6 times faster than bread kept at room temperature. They measured the firmness of bread over time and observed that refrigerated slices became dense and dry in just 3 days, while room temperature bread remained soft and edible for up to a week. But this isn't only about texture. Bread also loses its aroma in the fridge. You know that warm, comforting smell of fresh bread straight from the oven? That scent comes from volatile organic compounds that degrade quickly when exposed to cold temperatures. So when bread starts tasting flat or bland, it's not your imagination, it's the fridge stripping away those delicate flavors. So what's the best way to keep bread fresh? The answer depends on how quickly you plan to eat it. If it's within a few days, store it in a bread box or paper bag at room temperature. Make sure there's some airflow to prevent mold, but enough enclosure to keep the loaf from drying out. If you don't plan to finish a loaf in a week, the freezer is your friend. But here's the key. Slice it first. That way, you can take out only what you need. Pop frozen slices straight into the toaster, and you'll preserve that soft, fresh-baked texture. Just avoid letting frozen bread thaw at room temperature before toasting, because that's when moisture damage begins. These small habits might not seem like much, but over time, they protect the quality of the food you eat and help you avoid wasting money or nutrients. And as we move forward, you'll see just how many foods quietly suffer from the cold, even though they look perfectly fine from the outside. Let's move on to a food that many of us keep in our kitchens not just for flavor, but for its healing properties: honey. Honey has long been regarded as one of nature's most perfect foods. In fact, archaeologists have discovered sealed jars of honey in Egyptian tombs that were still perfectly edible after thousands of years. That's because real honey never spoils when stored properly. But there's one simple mistake that can change everything, and that's putting honey in the refrigerator. When honey is exposed to cold temperatures, it begins to crystallize. The smooth golden liquid turns thick and grainy, sometimes forming hard sugar-like chunks that won't dissolve easily. Now, crystallization in itself isn't dangerous, but it can make honey nearly unusable for many people, especially when trying to stir it into tea or drizzle it on toast. But there's a more serious concern: moisture. Each time you open a chilled jar of honey, condensation forms, and that moisture slowly seeps into the honey. This is where problems begin. According to the National Honey Board, honey stored below 50 degrees Fahrenheit loses up to 35% of its natural antimicrobial properties. Those are the very compounds that give honey its reputation as a natural antibiotic. They're what ancient civilizations used to treat wounds, soothe sore throats, and preserve food. The cold not only reduces these properties but also disrupts honey's complex flavor. With over 180 natural compounds responsible for its aroma and taste, raw honey is like a symphony of nature. But refrigeration causes these components to break down unevenly, and over time, your expensive jar of raw honey may start tasting like cheap syrup. That's especially true with darker varieties of honey, which actually contain more antioxidants than lighter ones. And unfortunately, those antioxidants are even more sensitive to cold. So how should you store honey properly? Keep it at room temperature, ideally between 64 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Use a tightly sealed glass or food-safe plastic container, and always keep it away from direct sunlight. If your honey does crystallize, don't throw it out. Place the container in a bowl of warm water and stir gently. It will return to its liquid form without losing its benefits. A small adjustment like this can go a long way in preserving honey's healing power for your body and your kitchen. Now, from the sweetness of honey, let's shift to something a bit bolder: coffee. For many people, coffee isn't just a beverage, it's a ritual, a moment of calm, or even a source of daily joy. But if you've been storing your coffee beans or grounds in the refrigerator, it might be doing more harm than good. Coffee is incredibly porous, which means it absorbs odors from everything around it. That leftover tuna salad, that half-eaten slice of pie, the open jar of pickles on the next shelf, all of those smells can seep right into your coffee. It's no wonder your morning brew sometimes tastes a bit off. But the bigger issue is moisture. When coffee is placed in the refrigerator, the frequent opening and closing of the door causes small shifts in temperature. That leads to condensation forming inside the bag or container. And once moisture enters the coffee, the aging process accelerates. Mold can develop, and the oils inside the coffee beans, which are responsible for most of the flavor, can solidify, making it harder for those rich aromas to release during brewing. A study from the Specialty Coffee Association found that refrigerated beans can lose up to 60% of their aromatic compounds in just 1 week. That's why your coffee starts to taste flat, no matter how fresh it was when you bought it. The best way to store coffee is in a sealed, opaque container, kept at room temperature in a dark, cool cabinet somewhere stable, away from light, heat, and moisture. If you buy coffee in bulk, or want to store it long-term, freezing is a better option than refrigeration. But here's the trick. Divide your coffee into small weekly portions, seal them tightly, and only take out what you need. Never refreeze coffee once thawed, because moisture damage becomes irreversible. Small changes like these may not seem like much at first, but over time, they can restore the full flavor of your coffee and protect you from ingesting unwanted contaminants. And if coffee is something that brings you comfort, energy, or a little joy in the morning, then preserving its quality is well worth the effort. Now let's talk about one of the most powerful ingredients in your kitchen: garlic. Whether you're using it to flavor a homemade sauce or taking it for its health benefits, garlic is truly a gift from nature. But unfortunately, many people unknowingly weaken its natural power by storing it the wrong way. If you've been keeping your garlic bulbs in the refrigerator, it might seem like you're helping them last longer. But the truth is, cold storage actually causes garlic to break down faster, both in flavor and in nutrition. One of the first things that happens is sprouting. Those green shoots that start growing out of the cloves aren't just a cosmetic issue. They carry a bitter taste and can upset digestion for some people. But more importantly, refrigeration introduces excess moisture, and that moisture creates an ideal environment for mold. Some types of mold, especially those that grow on improperly stored garlic, can produce harmful substances called mycotoxins. In a study conducted at the University of California, Davis, researchers found that garlic stored in refrigerated environments lost nearly 50% of its allicin content in just 10 days. Allicin is the compound that gives garlic its distinctive smell and its incredible health benefits. Benefits like supporting heart health, fighting bacteria and viruses, and even reducing inflammation. So when we store garlic in the cold, we're not just changing how it tastes, we're also diminishing the very compounds that make it valuable to our health. The texture also suffers. You might have noticed that refrigerated garlic becomes soft or rubbery, and when you try to chop it, it turns into a sticky paste that clings to your knife instead of releasing its oils properly. So how should you store garlic? Keep it in a cool, dry place with good air circulation. A mesh bag, a wire basket, or even a paper bag works perfectly. The ideal temperature is around 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Never store garlic in plastic or sealed containers. It needs room to breathe. And don't place it near your stove, where heat and humidity from cooking can speed up spoilage. When properly stored, a whole head of garlic can stay fresh for up to 6 months. And once you break the bulb and start using individual cloves, try to use them within 10 days. Here's a small but powerful tip. Room temperature garlic releases its flavor more completely than cold garlic. That's because the essential oils inside need warmth to become active. The result? Your dishes will taste better, and your body will absorb more of the benefits garlic was meant to give. Now, from something pungent and powerful, we move to something soft and sweet: bananas. They're convenient, portable, and packed with potassium, vitamin C, and natural fiber. But despite their many health benefits, bananas do not get along well with the refrigerator. Bananas are tropical fruits, and their cells were never meant to handle cold temperatures. When stored in the fridge, the banana's cell walls start to break down. This leads to a process scientists call chilling injury, which not only ruins the texture of the fruit but also causes nutrient loss. A study from the Queensland Department of Agriculture found that bananas stored below 56 degrees Fahrenheit lost up to 80% of their vitamin C content within 5 days. That's a significant loss for anyone, but especially for older adults, who rely on vitamin C to support immune function, collagen production, and antioxidant defense. And the damage doesn't stop there. Bananas that are chilled too early in the ripening process stop developing beneficial compounds altogether. The blackened peel that you see is more than just a cosmetic issue. It's a sign that the fruit has stopped protecting itself. Those brown patches often indicate where the internal tissue has died, even if it still looks edible. So, how should you store bananas instead? Keep them at room temperature, ideally between 56 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Hang them on a banana hook to prevent bruising and allow air to circulate. If you want to speed up ripening, place the bananas in a paper bag with an apple or avocado. The ethylene gas they naturally release will help the bananas ripen faster. And if you need to slow down the ripening, separate the bananas and wrap the stems in plastic wrap. This reduces ethylene exposure and can extend freshness by a few days. Once your bananas reach perfect ripeness, you can refrigerate them for 1 to 2 days to prevent over-ripening, but be prepared for the skin to darken, even though the inside stays mostly intact. Better yet, peel and freeze ripe bananas for smoothies. Frozen bananas create a creamy texture without the need for added sugar or ice, making them perfect for healthy treats. In the end, bananas are best when stored like they were meant to grow in warmth, with care, and a little patience. Onions may seem like a safe fridge item, but refrigerating whole onions actually causes them to absorb moisture, leading to mold growth and a breakdown in flavor. According to research, cold temps convert their natural starches into sugars, making them oddly sweet and soft. That soft texture comes from ice crystals damaging their cell walls, ruining their ability to caramelize. The solution? Store whole onions in a dry, ventilated space, away from potatoes and sunlight. Once cut, refrigerate in an airtight container and use within a week. Tomatoes, on the other hand, suffer even more when stored cold. A study from the University of Florida found that refrigeration shuts down hundreds of flavor-producing genes in tomatoes, and the change is permanent. The cold also reduces lycopene availability by up to 65%, weakening one of the key antioxidants that supports heart and immune health in older adults. Plus, cold temps create grainy, watery textures that ruin fresh tomato dishes. Instead, store tomatoes at room temperature, stem side down, away from direct sunlight, and never in sealed plastic bags. Too many ripe tomatoes? Turn them into sauce and freeze for later. Cooked tomatoes actually deliver even more lycopene. These may seem like small changes, but they make a big difference, especially when it comes to protecting nutrients our bodies need most. So now we want to hear from you. Have you been refrigerating onions or tomatoes without realizing the impact? What change will you try first? Let us know in the comments. Share this video with someone who loves cooking or gardening, and don't forget to subscribe for more easy health tips that truly make sense for life after 60. Avocados are one of nature's best foods for heart and brain health, rich in healthy fats and antioxidants. But when you refrigerate them before they ripen, cold temperatures destroy up to 90% of their antioxidant power and turn their creamy texture into something dull and stringy. The best way to store them is simple. Keep unripe avocados at room temperature until they soften naturally. Once ripe, you can refrigerate them for just a couple of days if needed. And if you've already cut one, leave the pit inside, brush the surface with lemon juice, and store it with a slice of onion to prevent browning. These small details might seem minor, but together they protect your food's nutrients, flavor, and your overall well-being. Because every vitamin, every antioxidant, every bite matters, especially as we age. You don't need expensive products or complex diets. Just a few mindful changes in how you store food can make a lasting difference for your heart, brain, and immune system. Now, take a look inside your refrigerator and ask yourself, which of these 9 foods are you keeping cold without realizing the damage? Try storing them the right way this week and see the difference. And if this message helped you, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with a friend who cares about healthy aging, and tell us in the comments which food surprised you the most. Together, let's keep learning, stay strong, and age wisely, one smart choice at a time.